First off, I need to say I'm truly grateful for being able to participate in this presentation, being invited to this conference. I've wanted to visit Israel for as long as I can remember, and I really thank Yoram, Honig, and the fabulous team at Keshet for helping to make this possible. So thank you. And as Yoram's pointed out, I'm responsible for the creative in Technicolor's animation business, including the service business and our recently formed original content business, mostly for television, but also for film. Incidentally, our first original film is a partnership between two groups from Israel, Crew 972 and The Operating Room. We're also developing a really innovative boys action TV series called Polarizers, without a terjemaan of The Operating Room. Our content business is just 4 years old, but we're showing some strong signs of success. I'm going to play you a sample of a couple of things that we've been developing recently. I think it's important you see these before I continue with the rest of my presentation, because I'm going to show them to you again at the end and supplement them with a few... and I'm going to supplement them with some new technology that's inspired in part by video game psychology. So the first project I'm going to show you is called The Deep. It's a big underwater family adventure series. Think Lost in Space meets Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. And here's the 2-minute teaser.
Come in, Aronax!
Aronax to Rover. What did you do, Ant?
Fontaine, I'm coming in! Open the moon pool!
Ant?
Come on, boy! Keep up!
What did you do this time?
I didn't do anything. It was Jeffrey.
Oh, I see. You're blaming your fish.
Do you hear him denying it?
Ant, what's coming?
I don't know what it is, but it's huge, and it's headed straight for us.
And I'm guessing it will have big teeth.
Of course it will have big teeth.
Mom! Dad!
Thanks. The next property I'm going to show you is called Camellia. It's one of my favorites. It's a truly organic concept. Camellia is about a little chameleon who stands out contrary to other chameleons who tend to blend in. Here's a short teaser.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shh. Ready or not, here I come. Where are they? Ta-da!
Camellia, what are you wearing?
I know, it's brilliant, right? Got you, Camellia! Yes! First one found again! Yeah!
But that's not how you play.
That's how I play. Fantastic.
Thanks. As I'm sure is the case with many of you, we find our properties via table pitches, books, graphic novels, and even the odd pencil sketch. We only have a handful of projects in development, and we are the antithesis of the development company that throws everything at a wall and sees what sticks. We find a property that we truly love, then we nurture it into something that we think is an A-plus property. Sounds perfect, doesn't it? The problem is, everyone thinks their properties are A+, and everyone is trying to convince the broadcasters or the studios to buy their idea. And on top of this, as we've all seen, in the last 5 years, there's been an exponential growth of technology that is pulling audiences' attention away from traditional broadcast media. The goal of this presentation is to look at some of these technologies and discuss some thoughts on how to utilize them to help connect audiences back to our primary screen. Now, I'm not simply talking about putting your brand on an iPad or an iPhone. I can't tell you how many pitch sessions I've been in, and I'm sure you're the same, where I've heard the words, and we have a robust interactive experience plan for our brand, and we think kids will love it. To me, that just means there is no plan. So perhaps there's an opportunity here for a fresh perspective. For context, I first started in visual effects, then moved into CG animation around the time that visual effects was pushing more into the realm of CG. I spent nearly a decade at Mainframe Entertainment in Vancouver, Canada, and now I've been at Technicolor for over 5 years. But in between, I spent 1 year at a games company. I thought it would be good to learn a slightly different skill set that seemed to have much in common with my own. However, that experience opened up a new world for me in looking at ways to engage the audience. I'd always loved games, but I'd never before examined the psychology of what makes an effective game engage its audience. Sometimes I think we get caught up in trying to construct the perfect story, fitting it into a rigid box of structure and rules, but really the perfect story is one that's specifically built to connect and engage its audience every step of the way. A game designer's #1 goal is to create a series of highly engaging experiences that manage to suck you into an extended, immersive experience. So since game design is so prevalent in all these distracting technologies, I think it's worth examining what they're doing right and what we might learn from it. My goal is not to get into the details of game design, but rather to speak to a tiny bit of the psychology of effective game design. I think I'm really just pointing to some basic human psychology that the games community have embraced and have been progressively perfecting over the last 2 decades. After all, we're human and we tend to react to things in fairly consistent ways. But because game design has mastered this so effectively, and because I want us to consider the competing or distracting technologies to our own, I feel it's the perfect place to explore. The first area to discuss, perhaps because it's the most obviously related to our concept of traditional media, is the psychology of immersion. Now, we may simply think of a good game as fun, but in the games world, psychologists refer to the ability of the audience or the player to engage with the game in a variety of ways, referring to a state of mind called presence or spatial presence, flow, or engagement. Now, without getting into the intricacies and the complexities of the terms, for our purposes, we can think of it as the state of mind and body where the activity is so engaging that nothing else seems to matter. People lose track of time, their eye movement changes, and daily distractions are screened out by the mind. Gamers refer to a state of mind where they lose themselves in another world, they adopt another reality for a brief time. Essentially, they lose themselves in the game. In his blog on the psychology of video games, Jamie Madigan says, "People who experience immersion tend to only consider choices that make sense in the context of the imaginary world." We'd probably call this suspension of disbelief. And in an effort to show that immersion is a real and distinct state of mind, a research team demonstrated that it takes real time to come out of that state of mind to effectively engage in a new task. Incidentally, when parents refer to their gaming kids as mindless couch potatoes, they're probably witnessing their kids in this state of immersion. I distinctly remember having a somewhat profound realization after playing a session of World of Warcraft. As silly as it sounds, I realized I was having memories of being in that world. And of course, I knew the difference between it and the real world, but it surprised me that I could have memories of experiences and locations of a place that didn't actually exist. We here likely think of immersion as what comes from the power of a good narrative experience. And I happen to believe that good narrative is one of the best ways to create an immersive experience. Narrative in any form, a great bedtime story, a book, a movie, even a narrative-driven game, all can be incredibly immersive. But game designers have an edge on us because, by definition, a gamer's experience is interactive, not passive. For the player, immersion is beyond simply an engaging attitude towards a game. It is a real experience. Game designers know the concept of immersion very well, and they design their games specifically to encourage the player to experience immersion. I suppose they construct games something like a street magician does a magic trick. They lead the viewer's eyes where they want you to focus, but they also get you involved in the experience itself. The experience becomes more powerful when you are involved. A game designer designs everything to somehow encourage you to want to stay, to keep playing, to uncover something new, to acquire something new, to achieve something you haven't previously achieved, to make you feel good about your interactions within that world. Take a look at this very simple and very innocent-looking Candy Crush map. Everybody knows the game Candy Crush? Probably have some addicts in the room. It cleverly teases you with an interactive map showing unrevealed areas where you haven't yet been. So even the map itself, which is not part of the core gameplay, is designed to encourage you to want to uncover, to just keep playing the game. In a UK study entitled Measuring and Defining the Experience of Immersion in Games, researchers found the following indicators of immersion: lack of awareness of time, loss of awareness of the real world, and involvement and a sense of being in the task environment. As Jamie Madigan puts it, the more that you are compelled to think through, participate, or interact with your environment, the more immersive your experience will be. There are countless varieties of game activities, which in and of themselves are engaging and immersive, but some of the subtle and not so subtle techniques of keeping a player engaged are in the areas of creating achievement, rewards, customization, collecting, rarity, and the ticking clock, to name just a few. I'll describe some of these now. First, a few thoughts on rewards and achievement. This one is pretty obvious and seems simple. People tend to feel good when they win a reward, even for the smallest insignificant behavior. And they tend to associate this good feeling with the overall experience. You can see this demonstrated in many different kinds of games, everything from a voice that says, "Great job," to earning virtual coins, to balloons and streamers that fly when you complete a task. It's actually quite amazing that this can be really over the top and still be effective on the player. Take the popular game Peggle, for instance, which many of you may be familiar with. It's a really deceptively simple pinball-like game with arguably a little bit of skill and a whole lot of luck involved. But it's really well designed, and when you score, the game makes you feel like you're the greatest player in the world. Check this out. The goal here is to get the last orange peg. It doesn't get more over the top than that. Fireworks, rainbows, music. Now, interestingly, and contrary to what one might think, random rewards, as opposed to rewards at regular intervals, are apparently the most effective way of getting someone to continue to engage in a specific behavior. Think of the addictive slot machine. And regarding the closely related idea of achievement, examples of achievement include allowing a player to gain levels or leveling up, giving the player a sense of improved skill, or increasing scores for accomplishing certain tasks. These are very often intangible rewards for behavior, but they resonate with the human psyche. As Dr. Cheryl Olson of the Massachusetts General Hospital Department of Psychiatry says, people work for intangible rewards all the time. Money and love, for example. A paycheck may seem solid, but it represents an abstraction. And what's more abstract than earning an A in philosophy? Small things can be quite rewarding. And interestingly, loss aversion can sometimes be a more powerful force than gaining or winning. Studies have shown that people tend to want to avoid a penalty more than they want to gain a discount, even if it actually amounts to the exact same thing. Many game designers know that while people like the promise of winning something, they hate the promise of losing it even more. Some thoughts on collecting and the concept of rarity. There's something in the human psyche that gravitates to some form of collecting. It seems that humans will collect almost anything. And very often, perhaps most often, it has more to do with the emotional value and a sense of fulfillment than about monetary value. Psychologists speak about the need for people to have an object of desire, but without getting into the various theories and types of collectors, it seems to point to some kind of emotional security. In other words, it makes people feel good, and that good feeling is associated with the activity that surrounds it. And good feelings are what make up good memories, and they tend to bring you back time and time again to recapture that feeling. And regarding rarity, the desire to obtain something rare is a form of collecting, but it can be an even stronger lure. Rather than encouraging the player to find or collect a limitless supply of any group, creating artificial rarity in games triggers a desire for players to need and an urgency to obtain that virtual thing before anyone else does. There are collectors who are looking to complete collections, and then there are collectors who are looking for that one-of-a-kind object. And very often, this is where extreme value is attributed. This is an example of an apparent rare creature from World of Warcraft. This may not seem special to you or I, but with literally millions and millions of players playing this game, there's clearly something Blizzard is doing right. Now, customization is really just the ability to choose things that are unique or somehow reflect our personality. This is true even when the choices are quite limiting and even when they barely can be considered personal choices. I'm sure there are literally thousands of good examples of games with some form of customization. These might be very simple techniques like the ability for the player to change the background color to fully customized characters, virtually guaranteeing that no two are alike. Take these images from GTA, options to personalize your cars or your wardrobe, your characters. As you might expect, there are studies that show increased satisfaction and commitment when players are offered up a selection of choices. I think nearly the first thing I did when I bought my new iPad was to change the background screen. Somehow, in some small way, this made it mine. The idea here is that players feel more investment, more ownership in an experience where they have personally modified something to suit their taste. And ultimately, this sense of virtual ownership is clearly meant to help encourage immersion. Another typical form of encouraging immersion is the use of the countdown clock, timer, ticking time bomb, whatever you choose to call it. This, of course, is a familiar device to us in narrative forms like TV or film. And like our medium, sometimes it's obvious and feels like a cheap trick, but other times it's an incredibly effective tool to draw the viewer or the player into the scene, into a moment-by-moment, edge-of-your-seat ride. You see this device used in countless games, from big epic console games to smaller mobile puzzle games, and everything in between. This tends to be used sporadically and not generally the core game activity. Take Candy Crush again, for instance, where a 1 or 2 minute countdown clock is used every once in a while, but to great effect. Interestingly, according to a study done by Aaron Sackett and his team at the University of Chicago, people actually claim to have more fun when a countdown clock is sped up. The idea seems to be that when the clock ends prematurely, the player's mind assumes that the missing time was simply because he was having fun. And when researchers reversed the experiment, when the clock took longer to count down, the analysis suggested that people felt like they were having less fun, likely because their minds attributed the additional length of time with boredom. Another often overlooked aspect of the level of immersion is the player's simple willingness to commit to the game. Obviously, you have to have a great concept or a hook, something that gets the audience to open the door or to download the app. But once they've opened the door, people tend to feel compelled to follow through with a decision. Jamie Madigan says, once we make a commitment or state a preference, some small amount of mental inertia sets in, and we feel pressure to keep our behaviors in line with our thoughts. An example of this psychology in practice might be Amazon or any other online shopping site sending you messages when a wish list item you'd previously marked goes on sale. Now you may be saying, what on earth does all this have to do with TV or film? Well, it's very likely as standalone entities, our mediums will continue to remain, for the most part, passive. But I believe that some kind of convergence with these other technologies is inevitable. I think we're already seeing it. Pardon me? A few minutes left? Okay, I'm sorry. I think we're already seeing it. I think games prove that ultimately this convergence is where deeper immersion can take place. With all of this in mind, let me give you a sample of some of the things that we've been developing to complement our properties. None of this is meant to be exhaustive in any way, but perhaps it will give you a better sense of where I'm coming from and might possibly inspire some new ideas for your own brands. Okay, I'm just going to plug the iPad. Can I have a split screen, please? Hello? Thank you. So this first example is a second screen app to complement our property, The Deep. The technology behind this app was developed by Technicolor and uses an inaudible audio watermark embedded on the audio track of the primary media. It sends inaudible cues to trigger any kinds of events you want to see. We only have a small sample of the kinds of things you can do with it, but hopefully enough to give you a sense of it. As a viewer, you don't have to do anything. The events are triggered automatically as the media plays, so you choose to engage with any of them as you like. And if you can see this, I'm dragging. Oops. You begin by pulling the submarine down into the current to enter the experience. You'll notice that all the indications of technology are virtually invisible. The app is meant to be seamless with the property. Any indications of technology is part of the design of the show. In the upper right-hand corner, you see the submarine propeller that spins blue when it's syncing with the show. You'll see this in a second when I play the teaser. And beside the proper indicators for collecting virtual coins. Along the bottom are some offline features which I'll quickly show you following the teaser. And by offline, I mean things you can do when the show's not playing. Now I'll play the teaser. So the first event is this interactive toy here. You can put
Rover to Aeronax.
the toy
Come in,
equivalent
Aeronax.
Aeronax to Rover. What did
in
you
your wish
do?
list. The next
Fontaine, I'm
event
coming in. Open the moon pool.
is factoids on jellyfish. Public broadcasters tend to be
Come on, boy.
especially
Keep
interested
up.
in things like this where you can educate without preaching. And this next event is really cool. I like this a lot. It's a virtual card collecting system. So she won't render the trigger until just before she presses the button. Now I can access her. Now I can access her, and she goes into my gallery, and I'll show you that in a second. Again, other key set element features and so forth that you can interact with. Just simply by touching things, interacting with things makes a big difference. And then you can take that
You're blaming your fish.
school bag equivalent there and put it into your wish list.
You're denying it?
And then there's little mini games that you can do
What's coming?
that sort of are vaguely connected to the concept of the show. You can drag and drop these creatures to the depth that they swim. And if you do it, you earn virtual coins. You'll see a pop-up here.
Big teeth.
I earned 4 silver coins.
Mom, Dad.
And then when the show finishes and the credits start to roll, you can see this cross-section of the submarine, which is the main set piece in the show. And with my coins here, I can extend the experience. I don't have any gold coins. I can't open these rooms, but these other rooms here I can open with 1 silver coin. Another silver coin. So the idea is when I run out of coins, I have to go back and watch a show, collect more coins, and unlock more stuff. So it just keeps you engaged and immersed in the experience. And then really quickly, the gallery here has characters that you've unlocked because you've watched the show. Other characters I can't unlock until I watch the episode that they appear. And then quickly on the wish list here, we've got the graphic novels and those two things you saw me add. It's not a shopping cart, it's just a wish list. So with one button here, you can email the wish list to your parents and they can buy the stuff for you. So that's our app demo for the Deep. Do you want me to stop? I'll stop. I've got one more demo to do. So. Okay. All right, the next demo here, real quick, I'll go as fast as I can, is Camellia. It's based on the same technology, so the audio watermark technology. And I'm going to unplug the audio now. Is that okay? From the laptop. Okay, so I've also got a second screen supplement here, which isn't necessary for the experience, but if you want to supplement it and collect songs, essentially it's a song collecting app, you can see I'm pressing things and nothing's happening because I have to watch the show to unlock the song. So I'll show you how that works real quick here. So the concept here is that the doll can validate feelings and emotions of her counterpart on screen. And as a young child, this can be a very poignant experience, hopefully encourage her to feel confident in her own skin. So you'll see in a second here when the song starts that she'll emote a little bit. And you can basically, you plan this in the pre-production phase, you build it into the script, and then make it a much more interactive experience. But this gives you a sense of it. I'll put the mic on Camellia. So you'll hear her say ta-da when she pulls the dog out. And she says, yay.
Yeah!
And then, like I said, with emotions, you can sort of very gently, very, very softly indicate she feels bad about the balloon going away. And now she sings along with the program.
Hey, Camellia, paint the sky. Bye.
Can I just wrap up with one paragraph here? Okay. So this brings me back around to the concept of immersion. It's not about technology. In fact, when cool technology is brought into the mix, it's very often just a cool distraction. Gamers in a state of immersion don't see the technology of the game. They see it as an extension of themselves and of the brand. As media producers interested in retaining our technologically savvy audiences, this needs to be our goal as well. What I've discussed here is really just the tip of the iceberg. I've only scratched the surface. There are a lot more psychological insights that we could glean from the world of games. But the point is, I think it is possible to utilize this distracting technology to enrich our brands and encourage a deeper, more immersive experience for our audiences. If you're interested in knowing more about Technicolor's audio watermark technology, it's available to license and we can connect you to the team. You can come see me later. Thanks for your time.